Hello, let's continue. This one I actually missed last time, Footfall. Actually a Phoenix Games game. First 5 levels are kind of fun, because you kind of rotate the levels to make the fruit drop, rather than kind of like being more of a Tetris thing. That's kind of a fun idea. But it gets quite boring quite quickly, and also quite frustrating quite quickly, because either you only have 2 minutes to solve each puzzle, or you have to do it in only a certain number of moves. And because of how long the fruit takes to actually fall, it just takes too long to overall play, and gets kind of annoying if you have to keep retrying the levels, so I didn't get very far into it, because, well, Phoenix Games, I didn't even notice it was one of theirs when I bought it. Not aged particularly well because of the rolling situation, but I've had this for years. Chamber of Secrets. This game I never personally beat. I played a little bit, but never got that far. I can't remember how far into I got, really. But it was okay. This one, I got a decent amount, but I kind of got annoyed by Ron and Hermione, because it's one of those games where, as you're exploring, you're finding all these chests and stuff, and they just keep being all like, oh, there's nothing left here, let's go back to bed. And you're just like, dude, there's clearly more stuff to do here, because I'm finding treasures and things. So chill, Ron. Personal favourite, Order of the Phoenix, when it comes to the games at least, because I really like the sense of exploration, of like going to each of the little areas in Hogwarts, and how each area has its own secrets to find, and then you have like the whole secret thing being like guarded by Moaning Myrtle, being all like, there's more treasures to find in our secret room, Harry. I just kind of like that one, because it's fun to explore, even if it's impossible to actually die in it, because it's a very kind of basic game. Half-Life got very far into it. The first I've ever got into is Zen, but I just haven't really played it very much since then. I never got actually beat Zen. I think I got to the penultimate boss with like the weird sort of thing where it's like the mother of the head crabs thingy that you throw grenades at and hit it from underneath. It's a fine game, it's quite fun. Never actually played the Decay side story on that one as well, because I've never really had anyone to play co-op with. Haunting Ground, I've seen Let's Plays of it, never got very far into it myself, because I just don't really do very well with horror games, or at least I didn't at the time. Might give it another go, because I've got a lot better with horror games and things, so I'm generally better at them, but just not yet. Hurdy-gurdy, quite fun, quite charming, but I never got very far into it, because I kind of get, every time I try and play it, I kind of get, the first thing I ever get is to the first, like, competition level thingy, and then I just kind of put it down. Don't know why, I just don't really give it enough tries to actually get past it. But I quite like the charm of the game, and the atmosphere and everything is very fun. Heroes of Might and Magic. A fairly interesting one. It's a very strange one where it's very kind of top down, and then you have to kind of like put a bunch of like, it's a very weird combat, very kind of autopilot-y, if I remember. I haven't played it much, so I don't remember much about it, but I played a little bit of it, and it's okay. It's just kind of it gets a bit repetitive. It's kind of a roguelike kind of a thing as well. Hidden Invasion, haven't actually played it, but it seems interesting. It's like you have like a time limit to fight off like an alien invasion. Comes with screenshots in the back anyway. But it seems fairly interesting and fairly fun. I just haven't got around to it yet. Hitman, Contracts. Never actually beat this. I can never even get past the first level with it. I'm very bad at Hitman kind of games. This one's actually quite interesting, The Hobbit. It's a very interesting kind of take on the characters and stuff, and I quite like the way the story is told and things, and the way the whole thing works. The biggest problem I had was this one weird puzzle that it took me forever to figure out how to tell which order these things went in, these like jars. But it turns out the jars have kind of like, there's a certain thing with the symbol on the jars, or barrels, or whatever they are, that you have to kind of get in the right order. And the thing about the symbol kind of helps you figure out, like, I think it's like how full the barrel is, and that's kind of the order you go in, and it's a very kind of weird thing, but it's like, it's a fairly fun game, though. I've beaten it, it's quite entertaining, and I quite like how it deals with like Smaug and things like that. So the way I kind of read it in that particular game is both Smaug and Bilbo are making the same mistake in that particular version of events. It seems like they're both making the same mistake of being overconfident. So Smaug is failing to recognise that he is revealing his weak spots, but also Bilbo's failing to recognise that Smaug thinks he's from Lake Town. Big mistakes, but yeah, I thought that was kind of an interesting thing to kind of compare Smaug and Bilbo almost. Ico, I played that a while ago. It was quite fun. I've beaten it. I've only really played it once, but it was a fun game. I quite like the atmosphere and the exploration and stuff. The Incredibles. Didn't get very far into it. I got quite far into it. I got to about the point, appropriately enough, about like the second or third fight with the Omnidroid, which is appropriate because that was the exact fight that Mr. Incredible gets his butt kicked by it. That it's bigger, it's better, it's too much for Mr. Incredible scene. That was exactly the Omnidroid fight that I think I failed to get past. It really was too much for me. Incredibles, Rise of the Underminer. I've never played this one really, but keep needing to get around to it. Jack, the Precursor Legacy. Jack and Daxter, it's not Jack yet. This was quite fun. I quite like the platforming and stuff like that. It's very fun exploration. Although one very fun thing did happen in which I accidentally speedran it, because I got to the final level and saved it at Golemai's Citadel, and then when I loaded the save later on to actually finish the level and play the actual level, I was at the top of the Citadel and the cutscene for the final boss was playing. So I had to actually go back out and kind of platform down the Citadel to actually get the collectibles and play the level in reverse, which was quite funny, because I was like, I'm at 96%, I'm not going to lose these 4 things now because it teleported me past them, that's stupid. Jack 2 Renegade, I haven't got very far into that one, but I did enjoy the intro mission thing. I just didn't really get around to playing it beyond it, but I thought it was funny how they kind of play with the idea of Jack being edgier in this one, but also speaking, because after like the whole previous game being very whimsical and stuff, the first thing he says in this is, "I'm gonna kill the Duke," and I found that really funny. It's almost like the game's a bit self-aware about being edgy. Jack 3, I got to the final boss and got completely stuck, because Jack makes a stupid decision that frustrated me. Which is, you have a bunch of different vehicles in the levels. Like you have the basic Sand Shark that shoots a bullet straight in front of you, and then you eventually unlock some really good guns and like really good weapons like the Sandhopper, which is very fun as it kind of like bounce around sand dunes and stuff and fire these arcing shots. And the final boss is in this massive mech with you have to shoot these like weak spots on the soles of its feet and its like knees and stuff. And the biggest problem with it was you'd expect to use the Sandhopper because that's the Dune Hopper's the best weapon for that, because it can jump, so it can be in time with the knees and move with the knees and feet and stuff, but also it fires the arcing bombs, which would be easier to aim at the weak spots on the bottom of the feet. But instead he gets in the basic car with a terrible little front-mounted machine gun that can barely aim anywhere near the boss's weak spots, and it's just like, Jack, you moron. And then, of course, we also have the next game, James Bond, Everything or Nothing. Never actually beat it, played a brief amount of it, thought it was okay, but just never got around to finishing it, like a lot of games I've got. Jimmy Neutron, I beat that fairly recently, specifically Jet Fusion. It's actually quite fun. It's got a good amount of variety to the levels and stuff, and then the pirate level's insanely difficult, while most of the game's actually quite simple. And then some of the bosses are quite difficult as well. Like the whole pirate area is way harder than everything else, including the final boss. Like the pirate boss is way harder than the final boss, because it's like a lot of platforming on very kind of tiny platforms. But also, like, one slight awkwardness with the game is it's got some mildly racist kind of enemy designs. It's like very kind of 2000s sort of thing, with like, kind of, the first level has kind of like sort of Chinese stereotypes, because like sumo wrestling and stuff, because it's like, I can kind of like make an excuse though, because the whole thing is like, it's based on, the worlds are based on the books of the superhero universe Jet Fusion, so maybe just Jet Fusion's an idiot who wrote it that way. Fair enough, I guess. Dread vs. Death. Haven't got around to it yet, but it seems interesting. Killer 7, played very briefly years ago. I haven't really had a chance to give it another go. I've seen a Let's Play of it though, so I can know how it goes, but it's like, I keep meaning to get around to it, I just haven't. But it is very interesting in a very weird and janky way, like a lot of 251 stuff. Killzone, I played a little bit of it, never got far enough into it to really get any particular kind of opinion on it. I mostly got it because I heard that the later Killzone games were really good, and I kind of always like starting from the beginning where I can. And I was also kind of curious how they started. I just got a bit stuck at this one mission where it kind of did use a sniper rifle, but I ran out of ammo and had no way of getting more ammo for it, something like that. It was like a very early mission. I'm terrible at the game. King of Fighters, both 2000, Sonic continues, just kind of a collection of 2000 and 2001, I think. It's like a couple of the games, I think. But like, it's sort of, it's fine, but I'm not very good at fighting games, and the fact that it doesn't allow you to use analog sticks, it's D-pad only, makes it physically painful for me to play with doing like special moves and things. Kingdom Hearts, very fun, very classic. I really enjoyed this game. It was like a big bit of nostalgia for me because I was going through secondary school as it was coming out. And then of course in secondary school Kingdom Hearts 2 comes out. That was like my first real thing, being like aware of celebrities. It was like, oh, Christopher Lee's going to be in it. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. I really like the overall story of the franchise, because it's one of those weird franchises where it keeps making weird retcons as the games go on, but every retcon makes it make more sense, and I kind of find that funny. An example of that is, of course, in Kingdom Hearts 2, where it introduces the whole idea of the organisation, and is all like, oh, the organisation have no emotions. And it's like, yeah, but they're emoting all over the place, so clearly they have emotions. And of course, towards the end of the franchise, you realise that's actually because they've been lied to, and do have hearts the entire time, and it's just, they, being gaslit by Xehanort. It's a complicated situation, but that's the basic gist. Klonoa 2, the only Klonoa game I've actually played. I did beat it a while ago, it's quite fun. Although I do find going for 100% kind of frustrating, because you have those little areas of certain levels where you will have an auto-scroll a bit, and that's very easy to miss certain collectibles on, and it's just annoying trying to play through the entire level just to get those things. But I really like the story, and I really like the bosses and stuff, and it's just... The airship level is insanely hard, though. We have to go through all the different airship engines and stuff to turn it on. That's such a difficult level, because it's so long. Knight Rider, the game, very fun actually, very fun racing game, because you are Knight Rider, because you're Kid, you have all these like weird moves that you don't have in other driving games, like how you can kind of like have Kit go on 2 wheels at a time, which makes moving through traffic really fun, because it's just like, oh no, car's coming, we're gonna get hit, nope! That's so much fun to pull off, especially in the levels where you have to move really quickly down a crowded street while chasing enemies. One of the levels I found really difficult. I did beat the game, and it's got some very fun boss fights as well. It's very kind of a lot of variety. Like, for example, one of the first bosses, you're fighting a truck that you actually have to, like a truck cab, and you have to actually beat it because by grinding your undercarriage along the side of it, because it's too heavy to just head-on collision, it will just flatten you. I quite like how they make you get a bit clever with it, and then like the final boss fight with Car. You're kind of luring him into dangers and stuff, since they've actually had tackling him directly. That's quite fun. He also has a really fun mission where Carl actually forces Kit to go back to the tutorial level, but playing it on the hardest difficulty, because he wants to race Kit, because he wants to race with his older brother. And I find that very cute. Well, I guess technically baby brother. And I find that characterization very cute, that Carl is like the prototype, of course. He's like the evil prototype, is not as good as Kid or whatever, but like it's very cute that it's just like in that particular mission he just wants to play with his younger brother and see how much better he is, and just kind of, it's a very fun little thing, although of course he's holding the mechanic in the cab, and if he doesn't race him he's going to pull all the air out of the cab and kill the mechanic, so danger. But it's a very fun game, very cute, and it's got a wide variety of boss fights, so it's definitely worth playing. Also, it's got car platforming, because Kit can also jump, and that's amazing. It's so much fun in those ones. Legacy of King Defiance. Ironically, outside of the first ever Kane game and this one are the only two games I've actually beaten in the entire franchise. I've not beaten any of the Soul Reaver games or the Blood Omen 2. I've only beaten Blood Omen 1, the very beginning of Kane's story, and Defiance, the very end. But I found it quite fun. I was constantly switching between Kane and Raziel, and it actually has quite a fun boss fight in which you start off playing as Raziel versus Kane, and then you switch and play as Kane fighting Raziel back, and that's just a really fun idea. I really love the way it does the back-to-back storytelling. It does a lot of really interesting stuff with that. Legend of Spyro, New Beginning. Never actually beat it. I got quite far into it though. I got to like the final Breath tutorial thing, but I got completely stuck on that tutorial because some kind of one of the mechanics wasn't quite working. Couldn't work out what I'd done wrong anyway. Lego Batman. Very fun, I've beaten it. Only played it once though. It's just kind of like the Lego games, you only play each of them once. And some of them are just kind of a bit weaker than others. Like one I wasn't particularly fond of was the Lego Movie game, because it kind of just felt a bit half-baked, which is a shame. The next game I want to talk about is this one, Legend of K. Which I thought was okay. I got right to the end though and got stuck on the final boss again. That's the story of my life a lot of the time. Because the final boss is insanely difficult. Because what the game does is it introduces this mechanic at the beginning of the game, the drongs, whatever they're called, where you have to kind of like hit them with certain weapons after certain points. And normally it cycles in the same direction your weapons cycle. So you can normally either cycle forwards through your weapon wheel to like claws, swords, axe, claws, sword, axe, claws, sword, axe, or axe, sword, claws, axe, sword. Claws. You can cycle in either direction while you're moving along the drongs, and that's fine for platforming and stuff. But then in the final boss fight, it throws drongs at you that are completely out of order. And so there's no real pattern that I could think of, and so I kept falling off them when you're supposed to be using them to avoid one of the boss's attacks. Very frustrating. But otherwise, I thought this game was fairly fun, although, again, much like it's actually a bit worse in this situation than Jimmy Neutron in that it's got a lot more characters that have a lot more kind of exaggerated Chinese accents, and it's completely unnecessary, especially given it's mostly the rats that do that, and mostly the characters have American accents, so it makes it seem more racist than it was. Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. I've never got around to it really. Seemed interesting. I've seen videos about it, so I kind of know, like, I'm aware of it from like Mindpulp and things like that, but I haven't actually got around to playing it myself. This one's a very nostalgic one, Return of the King. That was the first Lord of the Rings game I ever actually had on PS2. And I remember getting quite far into it back then, but then when I try and replay it more recently, I can't even get past the opening few levels. Something about it, it's just kind of a lot harder than I remember it being. This one's quite fun, the Third Age, let's follow the knockoff Fellowship, who are just kind of like, this one they even have like almost anagram names, like instead of Aragorn it's Eragon, instead of Aes it's just Ease, that's all they've done. It's just kind of course there's a dwarf, there's an elf, there's another man, there's a lot of very kind of like, they're all the same guys, but in different positions. With the only exception being no Gandalf, but that's because Gandalf actually appears in the game. And it's kind of a funny thing because at one point you're fighting the Balrog alongside Gandalf. And it's just kind of hilarious because your characters die pretty much immediately because the Balrog just wipes the party except for Gandalf, and it just ends up with Gandalf soloing them. So it kind of takes what was like a pretty cool part of the movie where Gandalf solos the Balrog and turns it into almost a farce. And it's just like, oh, you're here to help? Thanks for helping and immediately dying. I guess I'll go back to business as usual. And then, of course, you end the whole game by fighting the Eye of Sauron, which is silly as hell. And it's kind of a frustrating fight because it's got some really annoying status effects, but it's otherwise it's a game that's very difficult if you don't grind, but it's also a game that's not very grind friendly because you don't really get random encounters in the same way as other games. Like, you have this little weird sort of like those all kind of the orbs that Sauron uses to spy on people, those kind of forgot what they're called, the Palantirs, I think, yeah, Palantir in the corner. Like, if the Palantir is changing colour, that means you're approaching a fight. And it's like, if the Palantir is a particular colour, then you have like a scripted fight, and then you have to kind of like wait for the Palantir to turn different colours to get unscripted fights. And it can be quite frustrating because sometimes you walk out of the scripted fight arena, not arena, but like zone, and it'll disappear, and you have to start the whole thing again. And it's just finding optional fights in this game is annoying because of that, because it just makes grinding more annoying than it should be, which is a shame because it's otherwise kind of fun and amusing, especially seeing how much more powerful as a mage the dwarf is than anyone else. His fire spells and stuff just demolish most enemies, which is funny because his axe is terrible. Looney Tunes Acme Arsenal, quite fun, and it kind of has a rather hilarious thing where it builds up the final boss as being this massive robot. Even though one point completely destroys the level you're in, where you have the corridor just turns horizontal, turns vertical, which is a pretty cool visual effect. And then when you actually get to the final boss, it's just kind of tiny. It's like twice as high as you. It's just like, well, that's pathetic. It's just because of the way the boss fights work, but it's just kind of a fun little thing. But like, other than that, it's a fairly fun actual game. It's got some really interesting ideas with like enemies that people you normally expect to be enemies, like Yosemite Sam, for example. He's just the sheriff of a town in this version of the situation. He's just a guy who's running a small town, and you have to actually help him get through this like little situation where he's in a minecart, and you have to fight enemies on his behalf so he can get to his saloon and deal with things. That's quite cool. I quite like that you actually sort of on Yosemite Sam's side. And it's quite fun kind of going through seeing all these different like versions of different characters as well. Like I think at one point you see like Robin Hood, Daffy Duck in a castle, that sort of thing, and you get a lot of interesting stuff like that. And it's quite a fun sort of game overall. It's just got some rather silly flaws. That's my show. I did a whole video on this recently. Very fun, very difficult. One of the hardest rhythm games I've ever played, but I don't really play that many rhythm games. This is fun. Mark Echo's Getting Up, based off like a Mark Echo, like a brand thing that's like some graffiti artist brand or something like that, maybe a clothing brand. I'm not entirely certain who Mark Echo even is. He's not really like the Tony Hawk of the graffiti. I guess he's like the Tony Hawk of graffiti or something stupid like that. But it's a fun game. It's like a beat 'em up, but you're also finding trying to platform places to do tags and stuff. And there's some tags that are mandatory for the game, and there's some really cool moments actually. Like at one point, you tag like this sort of a sky rail thing, like a cable car thing, so in such a way that the cable cars all crash into each other at the station, and the graffiti all comes together to read, "The man is watching you," and it's such a cool moment. There's a lot of cool moments like that in the game that are just really fun to get to. It's just the game itself though can be quite difficult and quite punishing. Like there's one particular level where I kind of gave up trying to 100% the game because it was on this like you're on the side of this like a subway car, and you have to get to the end of the car before it reaches a certain stop so you can get off it. But you're on the outside of the car, and as you're going through it, there are 3 mandatory tags on the subway car. So you have to kind of waste a lot of time tagging the car. And then of course there's the optional tags on the car as well, and because of the weird angle you're at, it's very hard to consistently get into like the tagging mode versus the moving mode. So you can often accidentally waste just the right amount of time to completely screw over your attempt at the level, which is quite annoying because it gives you literally exactly enough time to do all 6 tags without any mistakes. So any mistake and the level's doomed if you're going 100%. Which is a shame because it's got some pretty cool ideas, and I quite like that it ends with a sort of pseudo cliffhanger, but it's the kind of don't mind because again it's like you deal with the guy who's the main threat, who's the guy who screwed over your father and everything. You deal with all that, that's fine. And then it's just like, oh, there's more to conspiracy beyond him, and it's just like, yeah, but that's just like, you can just say that's just different, that's someone else's, that's just not part of the main character's story though. It's like, yeah, but the audience doesn't really care about that, they care about the evil mayor who you do at least deal with, so I don't mind that so much. It's just, oh, the character's now basically graffiti Batman, then he's off doing his own thing, and I quite like that, that's quite fun. I mean that quite literally, it's silly as hell. The Mark of Cry, or Cree, I'm not sure which, but it's quite fun. It's very difficult though. It's got a really weird kind of a combo system involving like the face buttons and stuff like that, pushing over certain sequences. Although it's not like quick time events, it's a very weird situation. Reminds me a little bit of the PS2 game I played years ago, based off the Da Vinci Code that I no longer own. But it's a very fun game though. It's just insanely difficult. I only beat the game because I do it using a cheat towards the end for infinite health, which is a little bit annoying. I might try and give it a proper go at some point, but it is, at least it's quite a lot of fun, and it's got a very cool story. I wanted to see the end of it. Marvel Ultimate Alliance, I never played it, really. I played a little bits of it, but I never actually got very far into it, because I just kind of... It's the kind of game I find gets kind of old after a while. I just never really got around to finishing it off. Matrix Path of Neo. Quite fun, but very difficult. Again, never beat it because it gets quite hard, but I do quite like the opening... not opening, but like the training montage with Morpheus, where you're like doing a bunch of different fights in different settings. That's very fun. It really knows how to kind of like adapt certain parts of the movie in ways that are very entertaining. So I like the game, I've just never beaten it. Max Payne, never got very far into it, never beat it. So I never played Max Payne 2 or 3. Because again, I like to play games in order. This has no actual cover to it, but it is Metal Gear Solid 2. Never beaten that one in particular, but I have beaten Metal Gear Solid 3 and Metal Gear Rising. Which is, Rising's the best one, honestly. I really love Rising, but Metal Gear Solid 3 is a classic game, very fun. I really like the story and everything as well. This one, that Back Adrenaline, I've heard of it. I've played a little bits of it, but not really played that much of it. I just remember it being a vaguely okay, like BMXing game. It's functional. The Mummy. Kind of amusing, but like it's a really weird one. It's like based on the cartoon that on the TV at the time, and it's just a bit wonky. I was never able to get past the first level because I couldn't really work out the controls very well, or like the jump arcs were a bit difficult. Like there's one particular jump that the game wanted me to make that I just couldn't, and so I just never been able to get past the first level of this. However, this one is very fun. The Mummy Returns, based on the movie directly, because you actually get to play as either Rick or Imhotep, and I really like that. I only beat the game as Rick. I keep meaning to play as Imhotep because I want to see his more magic-based moveset. That could be quite fun. I want to see how different his levels are, given he has very different abilities, of course, and very different motivations. But it has some very cool level ideas. Like there's one museum level where enemies are bursting out of the murals and stuff because the whole museum's coming to life and attacking you. And then you get attacked by animal skeletons and stuff as well. It's a very fun game. And Rick has a wide variety of firearms he can use, so that's very fun as well. And you get some interesting gimmicks, like there's this one level where you're in a village that's being hypnotised by Imhotep. So you have to be very careful when doing combat stuff because you don't want to accidentally kill the hypnotised villagers. There's a lot of very cool stuff here, and of course it finishes the joke from the movie of the Rock's scorpion form looking terrible because of bad CG, where like, it's obviously it's not a joke in the movie, but it's a joke about the movie. But like it completes the joke by having the PS2 version of the character look better than the movie version because it at least fits in the setting. Noting the Magic Book, very cute. It's actually got some surprisingly satisfying aspects as well. Like the whole thing is, oh, big is the magic book's been stolen. Of course, it's by the goblins, but it actually has the characters follow proper procedure. They don't just assume, oh, it's the goblins because it's always the goblins. Some characters do, but then PC Plod's like, no, we're going to do this properly. So we actually have to get evidence and figure out and actually rule out the other characters in Toy Town. I really like that. There's this whole like section of the game where you're getting everyone's footprints and comparing them to footprints found at the scene. And then there's this one character who doesn't actually, like, one slightly frustrating part of it is the final set of footprints character thing doesn't actually spawn in until after a certain amount of other objectives are done, which can make the game kind of frustrating if you don't know that's what's happening, because you might think you're just missing something, and just keep going around Toy Town over and over again like I did, trying to figure out what you actually need to do, only to do the one minigame that actually, like, advances the story and unlocks the last guy. Which is a little bit annoying, but I really like how they actually do have the police do police work. Which is a lot more thorough than you expect from a Noddy game. There's also a wide variety of minigames that can get surprisingly intense for a children's game, like the speed on the minigame where you're opening the restaurant and serving drinks, like serving food and drinks at the restaurant. That can get quite intense at times because the orders can come thick and fast in that minigame. And of course, it has another funny thing as well, where it kind of implies that literally the only vehicle in the entirety of Toy Town is not his tiny little car, because when the police have to end up chasing the goblins, but of course it gets revealed it is them that stole the book, and they have a motorbike, the policeman's just like, Noddy, can we borrow your car? And he's like, do you not have a police car? What kind of a terrible budget does Toy Town's police department have? Toy Town defunded the police. Because PC Plod, all cops are bastards, including PC Plod. That's just hilarious to me. Obscure, quite a fun game based on like old horror movies and stuff like that from like the 90s. It's kind of like a comedy horror game where you're a bunch of high schoolers in a high school dealing with like, oh no, there's monsters here based on flowers and stuff. It's quite a cool idea. There's some good amount of enemy variety that's quite fun as well, and there's some cool designs. And I quite like as well this whole thing where the enemies are all weak to light, they're photosensitive. And so for most of the game you can actually just break the windows and kill a lot of enemies that way, but then halfway through the game there's something very clever. The sun gets blotted out by spores, and suddenly you lose that. That's very fun. That's a really cool way of enhancing difficulty of the game for the second half. Obscure 2, absolute garbage. It's way more linear, or not linear, but way more kind of restrictive, but also terrible story, because one of the protagonists from the first game ends up committing a heinous crime in the second one. It's completely out of character, and it's such a weirdly unpleasant plot point. But also it doesn't even make sense that the characters would be at this party anyway, because you think they'd know you think they'd recognise the evil flower that all these college students are making tea out of, but they're idiots, so they don't. Stupidest thing imaginable there. Okami, classic game. Cutscenes can be a bit too long, especially if I've never played the HD version where you can skip them. Also, Isun can be a bit like, the game can be a bit much when it comes to like the pervert jokes and stuff. But it's very fun. It's got a very cool story though, and I really like how the boss fights work, especially Lechiku and Lechiku. Lechiku and Lechiku, the mechanical elves, are my favourite boss in the entire game. They're so much fun. Open season, never got very far into it, but it's partially because of the characters. Like, it has this whole... I never actually saw the movie because it looked terrible, but like, the characters in this version of the events seem like garbage, because the bear's in a very cool place. He's happy, he's stable, and then he gets peer pressured by this arsehole deer whose life he saves from getting attacked by a hunter, which then puts him in the hunter's crosshairs. The hunters are like, oh dude, you took my trophy from me, so I now want to kill you. But he's under like the protection of the town, because he's under protection of one particular policewoman, until the deer peer pressures him to do something stupid and getting him kicked out of her house, putting him in the wild, making it then open season for hunting him. And I'm just like, wow, this deer's an asshole. I don't care about these characters anymore at that point. So I just stopped playing around that point, because it's just like, these characters are awful. Over the Hedge, polar opposite actually, very fun, not based on the actual movie. Obviously it's based on the movie, but it does a very clever thing that I really like, which is that after the first 3 levels, which so many people don't get past because it's a very slow paced game with the mechanics, after the first 3 levels, which do summarise the events of the movie, it goes off the rails. Because the rest of the game involves the animal control company secretly actually being animal control companies, because they create mind control collars and mind control all the critters that they've been capturing. So you end up with like really great visual gags, like rabbits attacking you with by jumping on you, but on their feet they're having cleats, so they do more damage. And also there's like really great enemy designs, like this like barbecue grill that transforms into a helicopter and fires coals at you. That's awesome. I love that enemy design. And it also has a brilliant twist with Vincent the Bear, because Vincent's whole thing in the movie, of course, is being the guy RJ stole all the stuff from, is the kind of the big scary guy and everything. And at the end of the movie and the game, they established he got taken back to the Rockies by the Animal Control Company. But of course, you find out in the game that was a lie. Vincent's actually still in his cave in a mind control helmet. And so you actually break him out of his mind control helmet and recruit him. And he's got some of the funniest fighting in the entire game. Like, there's a brilliant moment where one of the turtles talking to him, and it's just like, as he's about to attack RJ, he's like, look, we have a common enemy, and the bird's just like, RJ? And he's just like, we have another common enemy. And it's such a brilliant moment, it's hilarious. The game's genuinely quite well written and quite funny. It's got a wide variety of enemy designs, and some other amusing aspects as well. Like, there's a recurring thing where you go into these different human areas to kind of like raid it for stuff to increase the like livability, to make the clearing nicer. So you have like, you know, like a movie projector and a popcorn machine and a bunch of other things that you get for the clearing. And at one point, of course, when you recruit Vincent, he ends up just hanging out at the clearing with the character's cubs, and it's adorable. He's like the big scary uncle. It's such a fun game with a really fun like story that a lot of people don't get far enough in to enjoy, which is a shame because it's some of the best writing, honestly. It's so funny. Persona 3, I beat that ages ago. It's quite fun, although a lot more limited than its sequel, obviously. In certain cases it can be quite frustrating if you try and do like all the social links, because it's got a lot of points where it's very easy to accidentally lock yourself out of certain things. But it's got a very interesting story. I quite like the reason for the main character dying means everyone else dying thing. It's the whole like, it's got some interesting ideas there, and it's just overall a fairly interesting story. Although, of course, everything going back to Tartarus means Tartarus does kind of get old after a while, though, which is a shame. But I have beaten the game. Persona 4, more interesting dungeons, and honestly a slightly more engaging story, because again, there's more variety than just a single, like, Tartarus location. It's got some really, like, weird stuff though when it comes to LGBT stuff, but then the whole Persona series has problems like that. The whole Shin Megami Tensei franchise has issues with LGBT representation, and like that kind of stuff. But I really like Kanji though. I quite like his whole arc of being like worried that, like, not necessarily being gay. That's how he's kind of that's kind of a bit of a red herring almost, because it's not that he's gay. It's more that he's he's insecure about having traditionally feminine hobbies, like enjoying knitting, for example, that sort of thing, and so puts on a tough guy persona to hide that. And I guess kind of how I see his character in a way, but it's like, it's fun. It's got a fairly strong story. It's just kind of also it's quite like that the main villain isn't trying to do anything big or evil. He's just like a weirdo who tried to do something heinous, failed completely, but then discovered a new way to be heinous that he preferred because it was more fun. And the whole pushing people into the TV thing was actually being a side effect of something else he was trying to do to them that failed. That's a fun idea. I really like how much of a creep he is. Pirates: The Legend of Black Cat. I thought it was vaguely interesting, actually. It's like it's trying to be Assassin's Creed Black Flag, but before it could be Assassin's Creed Black Flag, it has like exploring islands and stuff like that, and pirate ship fights and things. I got stuck at the very first boss fight though, because I just couldn't work out how to counter his attacks because he's insanely difficult, and the game's not that good. But it is like, it's amusing that it's trying so hard to do stuff that is like 2 generations behind having the power to actually do so. It's like it was ahead of its time. It's trying its best to do what Assassin's Creed 4 eventually ended up doing. It's just it didn't have the power behind it to be able to pull it off. Now this one, Pirates of the Caribbean: The Legend of Jack Sparrow, is really funny. Very good writing, because the whole idea is Jack and Will are about to be hung, and Jack's played as Scheherazade, telling this massively complicated story to keep everyone's attention, so that they don't let him get hung because they're wrapped in the story. And that's a very fun idea, because it means they can have some really funny ideas. Like at one point, Elizabeth Swann is just at this one location years before she even met Jack, and she's like, "Wait, why am I here?" And he's just like, "Well, I figured I needed you to balance out the devil may cry attitude I have to make me a bit more of a likable protagonist by having someone with a moral compass to balance me out." I quite like that he just puts Elizabeth Swann in the story because she makes the story more interesting. And she calls out that she was never there, and he's confused about why she's even in the game in the first place. That's really funny. And it's like, there's also great moments of like stories within the stories, or at one point a character in his story asks him, "Oh, I was wondered about this particular event, how did that happen?" He's like, "I'll tell you." And it ends up like with the more kind of nested parts of the story having more fantastical elements. I thought that was an interesting idea. I also really like how the final boss works, because the final boss is the perfect counter to the whole ethos of the Pirates of the Caribbean series, which is that pirates cannot be trusted, they're untrustworthy, and you can always trust a dishonest person to be dishonest. So the final boss of the Pirates of the Caribbean video game is actually three brothers who all are completely on each other's side and have each other's back. Like, you fight the first brother, and then halfway through the fight, when he's getting low health, his brother comes out to defend him. And then when those two end up low on health, the third brother comes out. It's a really cool way to escalate the fight and make it harder and harder and harder, because each brother has unique weapons and unique fighting styles, the one with the whip being the hardest to deal with, honestly. But it's a very fun idea, it's a very entertaining game, and I did beat it and really enjoyed it. It's got some really cool storytelling ideas. I really recommend checking this out if you haven't already. The Plan, very entertaining game. It's sort of a heist game where you're playing as 3 characters at a time throughout the levels. So, like, in each level, 3 characters go in there to perform part of a heist. And it's really interesting to see how the heist develops. So, for example, during the day you'll have, like, in one level you might have the jewel thief, the hacker, and the face, for example. And they all do have, like, little code names, and they appear on the map with little code symbols, like the face has a literal little human face as a symbol because he is the charming one who charms people into giving them information and lets down their guard and stuff. It's got a very bad pickpocketing mechanic, which is a shame, but its writing's very funny, and the whole idea is it's like, oh, the main characters get betrayed by this one guy when they're trying to steal these pair of Rembrandt paintings, and so they kind of decide to steal the paintings back from him, but also to steal the jewel that he's trading the paintings for as well, so they get in trouble with the mob, and that's hilarious because he's like panicking as the game goes on, the plan unfolds, and his whole deal comes falling apart. It's such a fun story. And the whole way of like controlling 3 characters at once, it's interesting, it's a bit wonky, but it works fairly well for what it is, and I really enjoyed that game a lot. It's definitely on my list of games to LP. Although this is true by somehow not having multiplayer. Well, it does have a 2-player apparently, but I never had a second player to play it with, so fair enough. First is Concrete Jungle. A very difficult game. I'm like a few levels into it. I've started playing it fairly recently. It's actually quite fun. It's a very kind of a simulation-ish game where you have to kind of really have to play as the predator to survive, because if you get surrounded, you're very quickly going to die. But if you play like properly, by like actually utilizing stealth mechanics and stuff, and it's got very in-depth mechanics as well. Like, for example, there's this whole thing with honourable kills, where enemies with honourable that would be honourable kills have like a red reticle, and enemies that would be dishonourable kills because they're just civilians and stuff have a green reticle. And you also have like these abilities to mimic people, so you can get passwords from them and things. And it's a very fun idea, because the whole idea is the Predator screws up at the beginning of the game, loses all of his stuff. He tries to blowing up his ship, taking out the whole city in the meantime while doing so, but ends up getting banished by these people because he got seen too badly, and because he ends up going for like 100 years or something like that, and while he's gone, humanity has actually repurposed his weapons, and it's kind of broken them. Like, there's this one group of people who are kind of like Haitian witch doctor kind of guys, who have gone a bit like skin people happy with his weaponry, so they're kind of copycats. That's the first thing you have to take out, is those copycats. But also they're stealing like a lot of other technology from predators, making Earth too dangerous to be hunting on anymore, because the humans are now wiping out the predators en masse as soon as they set foot on Earth. And I really like that you have to kind of like go to Earth and fix some mistake you made. And it's actually set in the future because of the 100-year skip. That's very fun. Peter Jackson's King Kong. I've never played it myself, but it seems interesting from what I've seen of it. Keep wanting to get around to it though. Primal, very fun. I really enjoy that game. It's got this whole thing with like, I really like Jen and Squee's interactions with one another, and I really like how the worlds kind of develop, with like the more orderly ones being less dangerous and then the more chaotic ones being way more betrayal happy. And it's got some very interesting stories. I would like to thank James Rossi for supporting me on Patreon as my Bio-Enchanted leg tier. I really hope other people can also join my Patreon to help support my channel and help improve the amount of resources I have for making better videos and be able to put more time into more elaborate thumbnails and title cards and things like that. Because I'd like to be able to have more time to really work on those kind of visual aspects beyond the actual video itself. Thank you.